So our next speaker is Evin Rose. I think for the first month of the summer course, I thought her name was Evin Rose. But her name is Evin Rose, first name, last name. Evin has sailed around the world. She's very at home on a boat and has spent a lot of her time before coming to Scripps making underwater films. During her time at Scripps, she became even more interesting and expanded her area of expertise even more by working in the Acoustics lab, working in the Smith lab on contamination protocols, and by working in animal husbandry. So for this project, Evin wanted to spend time really focusing on beaked whales, deep diving beaked whales, and acoustics. And I'm excited for you all to hear what she studied for her project. Welcome, Evin.
Okay. When I was 7, I had one of those, what do you want to be when you grow up school assignments? And I drew a dolphin trainer, because obviously that was the pinnacle of ocean careers when you're that age. But at the time, I didn't know what being a scientist truly meant, but I did know I wanted to be near the ocean and experience their world firsthand. That curiosity eventually led me to pick up a camera. Filming marine life felt like a new way in. Like every time I hit record, I was crossing a boundary into their world. And then one day in Norway, while filming a baby orca just a few feet away from me, it let out a high-pitched whistle. The sound moved through the water and through me. It was one of those moments where you realize that the ocean isn't just something that you see, it's something that you feel and something that you listen to. But the ocean doesn't just sing with whistles and clicks, it also roars with human-made sound. These are a few examples of anthropogenic noise created by us: shipping traffic, sonar, human-made noise filling the ocean relentlessly. We don't fully understand all the impacts yet, but we are starting to ask the right questions. By looking at changes in acoustic presence over time, we can start to explore how shifts in the environment are affecting certain species, and how intrusive human-made sounds can be, especially for animals that rely on sound to find food, navigate, and communicate. And that's what makes acoustic research so important, because even though the deep is mostly out of sight, it's not out of reach. And we've found ways to hear what we can't see. To put this in perspective, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do our own deep sea. And that's not just a fact, it's a challenge. And this year, I got to be a part of meeting that challenge. So at Scripps, I spent the year learning how researchers are trying to understand one of the most elusive animals on the planet, the beaked whale. They're one of the deepest diving marine mammals. Beaked whales spend their time diving for hours, thousands of feet below the surface. Most people have never heard of them, and when I tell people what I've been studying this year, I still get people saying, "Wait, did you say beached whale?" What you're seeing here is a visualization of how beaked whales hunt in the deep. Since there's no light at those depths, they rely entirely on echolocation, sending out high-frequency clicks and listening for the echoes that bounce off prey like squid. Each click helps them map their surroundings in complete darkness. They're evolved to survive in one of the most extreme environments on Earth, diving for up to 4 hours, surfacing for just a few minutes, and then disappearing back again into the deep. Down there, it's pitch black. They can't rely on sight. So how do they find food? How do they navigate? How do they survive? And that's the mystery. And that's where research comes in. Scientists are working to understand the prey that these whales depend on, and how changes in the ocean, including noise that we introduce, might be shaping their world. My project didn't focus directly on how noise affects them, but it did give me a place to start, a chance to learn the tools, the systems, and the bigger questions that we'll need to keep asking. Because when you're studying an animal you almost never see, you have to build the science to help you hear what's missing. So, in order to study deep diving species like beaked whales, scientists often use something called a mooring. It's an anchored system equipped with instruments that sit on the seafloor and record data over a long period of time. They're especially useful for long-term acoustic monitoring because they can capture what's happening in the deep without us needing to be there in real time. Thanks to Shannon Dolan and Dr. Simone Bauman Pickering, I got to be a part of a project using a deep sea mooring called VAMPS. short for Visual Acoustic Marine Mammal Prey Station. It's a tool designed to study the prey that these whales depend on in one of the most mysterious ecosystems on Earth, the deep ocean. But what made this project so meaningful to me wasn't just the instruments or the species that they were studying, it was the chance for me to step into the entire research process. So I focused on 4 data streams on the mooring, including GPS locations, optical footage, environmental sensors, and acoustic backscatter. Each one taught me something different, not just about beaked whales, but how layered, imperfect, and deeply human the research process truly is. And now I want to share that experience with you to show what it looks like to move from curiosity to discovery, because behind every insight is a story, and I think that's just as important as the outcome. So when we think about marine science, we often think about the exciting moments like tagging whales or diving into corals or making big discoveries. But the reality of science is everything that happens before and after that. It's planning, troubleshooting, adapting. It's sitting with messy data and asking, what is this really telling me? Often we only hear about the last step when the data becomes a result, but I wanted to see and learn how to do everything in between. And that became the heart of my project. The goal wasn't just to analyze data, it was to pull back the curtain and show what marine mammal research actually takes. It's layered, it's technical, and it's a lot of trial and error. So today I'm going to give you a glimpse, just a few snapshots of what that looks like. So marine research doesn't start with data, it starts with questions, and then gear, spreadsheets, and a lot of prep. Before any mooring ever touches the ocean, there's an entire behind-the-scenes process that most people don't get to see. I helped collaborate the Wombat Echo Sounder, one of the instruments we'd be using to detect prey in the deep. We lowered it into a massive testing pool and checked its performance and made sure everything was dialed in. You have to ask the questions, are the cameras logging? Are you absolutely sure? Because once this mooring goes hundreds of meters below the surface, there's no fixing it. You don't just hit record, you have to engineer the recording. And that's when you realize that science starts way earlier than you'd think. It starts with trust. Trust in the tools, trust in the planning, and the people around you. So then came deployment. I stood on the back of the ship, helping lower the VAMP's mooring into the ocean, something that I've come to know piece by piece, logging GPS points, watching the tension on the line, and adjusting to the motion of the sea. It wasn't just exciting, it was extremely grounding for me, because I knew what had gone into every moment, every cable, every sensor, and now we're trusting it all to work, completely unseen, thousands of meters below the surface. So now the mooring is back on land, and I get to start working with the data. One of the first things I created was a bathymetry animation. Using GIS, I mapped the seafloor around our deployment site, visualizing deep underwater canyons, ridges, and slopes where prey might gather and whales might forage. This particular site was over 1,000 meters deep. That's about 3,300 feet straight down. It helped me understand the kind of extreme environment that these whales were navigating. Completely out of sight, but not out of reach. And here's the cool part. These whales are hunting, diving, and living right in your backyard. So next time you're staring at the Pacific, just remember that there might be a beaked whale clicking its way to dinner. Next came one of the most unforgettable parts of this project for me. It was reviewing the optical footage frame by frame, searching for life in the deep. Most of the time, it was just flickers of lights or drifting particles or shadows that would disappear just as quickly as they would show up, and you couldn't make out what it was. But then one night, I saw it, a deep-sea squid gliding across the screen. I was so excited, I ran downstairs and I pulled my roommate back upstairs to see it with me. I was excited because something that I helped deploy hundreds of meters below the surface had recorded this. Along with this, I also tested annotation software to make that review process smoother, because every glimpse counts, and putting those moments together is how we figure out what's really happening down there. I also processed CTD environmental sensor data in a program called R, and learned how to compare acoustic backscatter to optical footage that you saw earlier. But don't worry, I will spare you the walls of numbers and the oxygen profile graphs, but if you are curious, there is more to explore. So when all this data comes together, scientists can start looking for patterns across different deployment sites, across seasons, across different ocean conditions. Individually, the data might not say much, but layered together, it starts to reveal a much bigger picture. This video is part of my digital story map, and it shows how these pieces begin to connect and how raw data can turn into something that we can actually learn from. So if you do want to dive deeper, to explore this data like a marine scientist, and to learn more about beaked whales and why this kind of research matters, I've created an interactive website to take you on that journey. It's called a story map, and it brings together parts of this project that I didn't have time to explain today. You can explore background, follow the fieldwork, and see how the data was collected, and maybe even start to spot patterns of your own. Because the more we share the science, the more people can connect with the ocean, not just as a mystery, but as something that you guys can be a part of too. So overall, my hope with this project is that when I talk about beaked whales, that they don't confuse them with beached whales anymore, but instead start to understand how extraordinary, mysterious, and worth protecting these animals really are. Because studying beaked whales isn't just about the whales, it's about understanding the ocean as a whole, and how these deep diving predators fit into complex food webs, how they respond to changes in their environment, and what their presence or absence can tell us about the deep sea. And in a world where human-made noise is starting to drown out the whistles and the clicks, this kind of research becomes even more important. And if we want to protect these animals and the ecosystem that they're a part of, we have to learn how to listen. But more than that, this entire journey has been a love letter to the part of me that didn't think that she belonged in science. To my 7-year-old self who drew a dolphin trainer that day because I was the closest thing that she could imagine and would never believe that she would be lowering an acoustic mooring into the deep to bring those voices to the surface. This year, I learned what it takes to do science, to build something from curiosity and stick it through with patience, persistence, and community. I wanted to say a quick thank you to my capstone committee and Shannon Dolan for teaching me everything and giving me such thoughtful guidance and honest feedback and supporting, shaping my confidence as I move into whatever role comes next, and to my family and Cam for being my foundation, and to my cohort. This has been the best year of my life, and I don't know what I'm going to do without seeing you guys every day. But yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Evin, I've got a question. Okay. Do you have any plans to apply what you've learned in a different context or with other organizations?
Yes, I actually already am. So I'm working with a foundation called the Seabird Foundation. It's a nonprofit that is putting citizen science into something that everyone can learn from. So I'm helping launch their Acoustics citizen science program. It's called Blue Echo. So I'm working on building their website and getting that whole thing together. So yeah, it's pretty cool. This is a rat tail, by the way.
Any other questions in the audience? Oh, I see one back there.
Hi, I apologize if I missed this, but how long was the acoustic tool at the bottom of the ocean for you to gather the data?
Yeah, the ones that I deployed were only in the water for about 24 hours, but they put moorings in the water for weeks on end. But yeah, the one only I did were a day. Cool. Thank you.